Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. My name is Dan Avner. Super excited to have you guys back for another episode. Got another great guest for you by the name of Michael Hudlow. I'm going to introduce here in a second. But before I do that, wherever you're listening to the show, or if you're watching this on YouTube, please like, subscribe, share, rate, review, anything that you could possibly do for the show. That really, really helps with anyone who's possibly interested, helps grow the reach of the show. And it is always very, very much appreciated. So that being out of the way, I am joined by a man by the name of Michael Hudlow. He's going to talk to us a little bit about a very interesting topic I'm excited to learn more about because I've had some experience in this, but never really deep dove. Is that the proper way to use this? Into it, but it's the topic of CRMs, customer relationship management systems. So, Michael, welcome to the show, man. Tell us a little bit about you.
No, thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. Tell me about me. Okay, so tell you about me. I'm a long time technology leader, a lot of experience with all the big four consulting firms, and then both internally and externally focused consulting and operational work. My background with CRMs in particular goes back about 16 years. Being a very, I guess you'd say, pretty early on adopter of the Salesforce ecosystem, which is one of the big boys on the block with regards to CRMs, but then also have my fair share of experience with SAP and Oracle and Microsoft as well. But there are countless more.
Yeah.
And I think to your point, or to your one thing that you already said, is that getting introduced to the CRM world. What I think is interesting there is, right now it has become very common for someone just to say a CRM system, and people immediately gravitate to those big systems like I just mentioned. And quite frankly, there's many more systems out there that are all excellent tools. But the reality is that everyone is already using a CRM system. It's probably just not an organized system. It's it's pen and paper. It's Excel spreadsheet. It's your Exchange address book and calendar. It really so the concepts of a CRM system are actually pretty easy to grasp by, quite frankly, anyone. It's where it gets interesting is if you're going to make the next step to refine that in your own situation, whether it's for yourself personally or for small, medium, or large company, it gets interesting is how far do you want to take it, and how much time and money do you want to invest and quite frankly, is it worth the effort? And sometimes the answer is no. So anyway, that's kind of my world right now, and that's where I've been doing my own consulting work for about 2 years outside of the big four kind of world. I have been doing my own work, which is specifically, and I'm not sure if I invented this title or not. I will gladly take ownership of it, but I'm not so sure. But I started calling myself a CRM recovery specialist. Because there's this side industry that myself and some others have discovered, that there are a lot of people, a lot of companies that have CRM systems, 2-3 years into having a formal CRM system, that quite frankly aren't so happy. Whether it's they've invested a lot of time or money or both, and they just aren't seeing the financial pickup as a result of that.
Yeah, very interesting. Well, a couple points to pick up on you there. I think you're right. I think CRM can be like a little bit of a buzzword these days, at least from the circles that I've run in and seen things like that. So I get that, but you brought up something that's very interesting too, because I think this ties back into the world of like software development. There's always the crux of documentation, right? As someone who just builds things and does things, it's a lot easier to just go and build things and there's do, right? Like I just do things. But then there's a lack of documentation as to, well, when you get things done and you get things ready and set up, and it's like, well, how does this actually work? How do I train someone on this? How do I actually document and prove that this does what I say it does, right? And I think you mentioned this with CRMs too, is because like my question to you, I'm kind of leading to is, is it, can these be too cumbersome for, small businesses, one person businesses who are like, because I find myself doing that sometimes too, of, well, am I going to really track all my notes and do all this stuff in a pipeline and do all this different things, if I can just kind of keep it all up here, or if it's not, there's not a, like a whole big endless list of opportunities that I have. Is it, is the, do you find that people struggle with the documentation piece of that, and it becomes too cumbersome? Is there like a point where it becomes like a trade-off of like, hey, this is actually worth doing instead of not being worth doing?
Yeah, for sure. I wish it was even as easy as that, but your example uh, is a good one. Um, I make the analogy in my book, and for those listening, it's how not to F up a CRM system. And the premise of the book was learning from others' mistakes. It's all about it's a case study driven book that just goes through hundreds of experiences that I've had or I've had interviewing others that have, and arriving at a place and saying, wow, I'm not happy, and how did I get here? And then kind of reversing that process and to figure out what went wrong and where. So to your specific question, it's not so different with regards to documentations from a development standpoint. Obviously developers have this notorious don't want to document kind of mentality out there, and I'm not picking on that one. I'm not picking on that at all. Um, but what is missed from that perspective is that if you take a system like CRMs and expect it to make change in your world, and I'm just going to throw some easy numbers out there just to make it relatable. Let's just say a company spends $1 million on a CRM system putting it in place, for example, whatever size company, whatever. Um, you know, who who is it intended to help, and how have those people that it's intended to help been participatory in the development of it? My point being is if you think about it from a little bit of an abstract level, the leaders that most likely approved the purchase of the system and the leaders that have probably said, hey, let's put it into my division or my geography, those people didn't use one of these systems that we're talking about. They used their own, secret black book, or whatever, the golf course meet and greets and all that kind of stuff, which is all fine. But they didn't use this kind of stuff. And as a result, what I have found is that they want a tool to help them better the world that they already have, instead of putting a tool in place at the same time improving the processes that they've had, because the world is changing quickly, especially with the advent of AI and all the things it can. So the long way around to answering your question is, if you go to a person that's going to use a CRM, and the most traditional, easiest, understand person, is your off-the-shelf salesperson. Excuse me. They already have a process that they probably feel works pretty well for themselves.
Right.
And then going into a room with 30 other people and showing up on a big screen, hey, here's the new process. You can't do that. It doesn't work. It just, unfortunately, it does not work unless that person was involved in making the process better, because you have at least a two-pronged uphill battle. One, you've got to convince the person that's involved in, oh, look at that, I had balloons.
That was cool.
Wait, okay, I don't know what I did. Anyway, that's part of my trick. I hope you're here for the next show. No. Anyway, so you have to one, make sure that the people are part of making that process. And because if you don't, they may say they're going to do it. They may say, they're going to comply, but they won't. Penultimately, a CRM system is a sharing tool. It is a very advanced sharing tool. If the information going in does not improve the information going out in both speed and accuracy, then it will not work. And even worse than not working, people could not rely on it so much that you think you have something good. And that's where one of these problems comes up. You may say, wow, I have this $1 million system and it's going to solve all my problems. Well, the problems might get worse because now you're relying on it. You're relying on it to do your reports, and that information's flawed. So there is a big problem with the question you just asked. And there are many different ways to solve it, but most of them are not technical. They're what I call human problems, human process problems.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting, and I think you bring up a good point. Like I remember in a previous sales job that I had, there was like a very outdated, old school CRM system that was kind of built into the thing, but the system wasn't like it was almost like there was a system that was built, and you could kind of make like a pipeline out of it, like a CRM type of thing, but it wasn't a CRM itself, right? So we used a lot of spreadsheets, a lot of kind of like those types of things. But it's interesting, like you say that, because I see that exact. I've been there in that situation. I've seen this happen where you have people that get very stuck in their ways of like, okay, I get this, and I put it into something like a Trello board or like something like that, and I put it in my
Mhm.
notes in my little black book or whatever, and then now all of a sudden there's this like, hey, we got this brand new tool, we just spent all this stuff on it, and it's going to be great and it's going to be awesome. Do you see like a lot of resistance, like you said, like it's like kind of trying to fit a round peg into a square hole kind of thing? But like, what are some things that you can do, whether you're a very small business, one person business, or you're a bigger business? What are some things that you can do to kind of like overcome those humps, that adoption, that ramp up process?
Yeah, so I actually have, and once again, I apologize if I have a little bit of off-color language here, but so I have, but it's meant to be. I say that I'm a humorist, but have a serious message. I have a chapter called Saboteurs and Assholes. Okay,
I
and
love it.
and it is not meant to be, it's actually meant to be somewhat of a term of endearment. It's not meant to be like you are it's meant to be this way. There are people that are set in their ways, and we all have them at companies, and usually, very frequently they're successful people and they should be listened to, and they do have, unique ways of doing things. My point being is that if a project manager or a product manager or the person involved in putting CRM systems into your company have not found those individuals, if they don't target those people and include them in the project from day one, well, they are going to be your biggest problem. And those people, so the only way to combat those people are to basically win them over and include them as part of your, steering committee or whatever, for two reasons. One, to get the knowledge out of them, or maybe for three reasons. Get the knowledge out of them. Two, to ensure they like the system and then become an advocate or a champion themselves. And lastly, their inclusion, and especially if they're known to be, the more difficult person on the floor or whatever, their inclusion and their support of it to others, just by hearing that that person's involved or supportive of it, will go a huge distance. And the one other tidbit I'll throw out there is, um, this is a sure fire way to have a failing system, is that if you can imagine like a pie chart, and let's just say, to keep the math simple, let's just say there's two slices on the pie. One is 90, I'm sorry, I have a little bug here. One is 90% of, just saying, sales. that I do sales, and 90% of my work is sales. And then there's a little 10% slice that says administrative work, filling out forms, doing time reports, whatever it is. Well, your advanced CRM system falls into that 10%. Okay, so
Hmm.
if you in the minds of the salesperson that we're talking about, so if that person perceives their 10% slice of administrative tasks to now being 11% or 12% or any number more than 10, your system will fail. Okay, hand down, there's nothing you can do about it. It will fail. I'm sorry. Just you're all gonna have to trust me on this. The worst case scenario, it could be hold fast at 10% in their mind. And the only way that works is if the improvement of the quality of the reports coming out, the information coming out, is so unanimous, so well received that there is no other option. So they're saying, you know what, it's still the same amount of time, but oh my God, I'm getting this fantastic whiz bang report, every morning, and this thing's incredible. Then you can get away with 10%. But the reality is you've got to make it less than 10% and come up with those reports to have a shot at ensuring success. It just happens. And the way you can do it is what I always, say to executives is that they have to commit to sunsetting whatever reports or mechanisms that were in play before the new CRM system. They have to agree to that. And they have to, basically say, come June the 1st, the XYZ report from some previous system will no longer be received. If you give it to me, I'm not reading it. That has to happen, so
Hmm.
I went a little long there on that, but it's all the same topic, is that there is a huge value that has to be looked at from the perspective of the consumer, whether it's an external client, internal client, customer, or user or operator. All of the above. The argument still holds water.
Very interesting. Well, and don't feel bad about giving long-winded answers. I mean, we're here to listen to you, not to me. So it's okay. So I guess to shift gears a little bit, one thing I wanted to make sure I had time to ask you about was the topic of AI and how all this plays into it. And my angle for it is, I think a lot of, well, at least in my experience, a lot. And again, I'm coming from this from not having a deep knowledge or experience with CRMs and stuff. I think at least for me, I kind of wish it did a lot of things for me, right? Like I guess I'm the lazy man when it comes to this. I just kind of wish that there were things that were there that were just, I didn't have to worry about, because I know I'm very forgetful, and that's why I need a system like that. But I also know I'm very bad about going back in and updating those things for myself or for whatever, team I need to work on or whatever like that. So, what have you seen with the advent or the incorporation of AI inside of these tools, inside of this space? Does it is it helping do things more automatically? Is it more predictive? Is it all of the above? Is it things that I'm missing? Like what kind of impact has it had on this space?
Yeah. So great segue. Thank you. Because it's actually my second book coming out, hopefully in the next 45 days, is all about the same title, except now it's how not to F up AI with CRM.
Ah,
And once again, and just as my first book, it's not a technical book. It's not a, throw these switches and set that permission set. None of that stuff. This is much my books are much more focused towards technical people are fine, but it's more broad based to be, it could be from developers to operators to users to technical leaders to CEOs, CIOs. Um, it's none of these systems fail. None is, maybe let's just say 99% of these systems don't fail because they're not technically capable, right? All of them. The smallest CRM out there is still super advanced. Um, they usually fail for all the reasons I'd mentioned before. It's perception, it's lack of aligning them to previous working processes, or jamming an old process into a new system and expecting miracles. And then people just getting frustrated that they're spending so much money. So that's true with AI as well. Okay, so what the AI tools, and there's so many. I would never write a technical book, I think, on the AI into CRM right now, because it seems like every day you wake up and there's another AI widget out there.
Yeah.
So here's the best places for pickup, general stroke for CRM and AI. One, the helping of cleaning data that is consumed by your CRM system, coming in from external sources or legacy systems, taxonomy help, data cleanup help, removing of redundant record help. That's a big pickup. That's not so specific just to CRM, but it is a very big help with CRMs, especially if it's a larger company tying into multiple systems and multiple divisions and time zones and geographies and whatnot. So the other big pickup is for if you think about CRMs being used by salespeople, and once again, really general thing to say by salespeople. It's used by many people at companies, consultants, professional services, manufacturing. It's used all over the place now. But from a specific to AI standpoint, if you think of business development activity, and then you break that up into marketing efforts, who should we be marketing? Response rates of one group of people versus another group of people, even content creation for those things, marrying what we're doing internally to what AI tools say is happening in the external, and then kind of blending in who our audience is that we can reach out to, and then jamming that all together and getting communications out there. AI is very helpful in that regard. For your own issues that you were saying, like, you're not alone. I mean, it's one of the big problems is that, if you remember that 10% slice pie chart I was speaking about, well, if you're requiring any one of your staff in any capacity to put in what they're doing in one system and then going into CRM to put it into another system, well, that's a failure point. Okay, so AI can help share that data or glean the information from one and put it into another. Absolutely. Obviously, when you have those automations happening, you also reduce manual mistakes, manual effort, and things like that. And then the other big pickup is, I mentioned earlier that you can have people that are difficult people that want things a certain way. Well, there is, you still have to have a workflow that is, let's just say, 80% the same for everybody in an organization. Like the core stuff in a workflow has to be the same for everybody.
Right.
Well, that 80% to the 100%, you may be able to throw AI in that model, in that space, to help with unique reporting requirements of a certain group, so that a difficult person, as we were talking about before, can live with a more rigid workflow process because they are able to have an AI tool that supplementally makes that workflow still look like, whether the inbound or the outbound, look like what they want. So it can kind of be this nice, like, icing on the cake that still keeps everybody content and complacent, and also keeps your data sane behind the scenes and the workflows working the way they're supposed to be working.
Yeah, really cool. I mean, it seems I think the biggest takeaway I've had so far, I don't know about you guys listening, but it seems like the biggest problem is just people problems. It seems like that's usually what it comes down to.
Yeah, it is, and it is, and people, I get asked the question a lot. It's like, Well, how's that any different than putting in a new AP system in, or a new email system, or whatever? Well, the difference is that, CRM, and then when you add the AI component, it just makes it even harder. But CRM is not customer only tool, and I once, in true story, I once had dinner, oh God, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, with Mark Benioff, who's the CEO of Salesforce. And we were having, just conversation about lots of things. And I told him, like, one of the biggest things I had problems with executives, or in coaching them or teaching them, is the word Salesforce, because it's not a sales platform. I mean, yes, it does sales, but it's not for salespeople. Like most companies, not most, many companies I dealt with are professional services firm. And if you go up to a consultant and tell them, hey, you're a salesperson, they're going to throw you down the staircase, because they're not that. And, for whatever reason. And you go into a manufacturing line and say, hey, you're salespeople now. No, no, I'm not. So I think, with regards to CRM, it is moving at warp speed, behind the curtains, and it is handling so many functions at an office that, quite frankly, is unrivaled previous to these systems existing. So you can't compare it to an accounting system. At the end of the day, it might do accounting easier for you, or the flow might be better, or the whatever it does might be better, but it's still accounts receivable, accounts payable, and everything in between. Whereas these tools, are CRM tools, are just a completely new breed, and they touch all of those systems. They touch the accounting system. They can touch your Microsoft Office with your intellectual property and document management. They touch into your HR systems like Workday, or a lot of them have their own modules. Look at Microsoft's tools. You just start clipping all these things together, and you've got your own animal. So the issue with CRM, is that it is new, it's evolving at a huge pace, and now we've got AI being clipped into it too, which is, like I said before, it's changing. I don't even, every morning, I think I pick up, go through my, Reddit blogs, and I'm just like, whoa, where did that come from? And so it's very hard for people to wrap their head around what can and can't be done, what should or shouldn't be done, and also what has to be replaced or what isn't have to get replaced. So yeah, people problems. If I was, just off the top of my head, 80% of the problem. And it's not technical. It's not tech. I mean, it's not technical in the fact that there's plenty of developers and very smart people that can figure out the technical doodads and widgets. That's my technical terms there. No, I'm a technical person myself. I don't go down that path. The problem is what the people themselves are willing to give up, adopt, learn, to make all these things work the way they're supposed to be, work the way they're intended.
Yeah, I mean, my mind goes to kind of the like a simple analogy of that, of like how the brain moves. What do they say? Like your mouth can, your brain moves how many times faster than your mouth can actually talk, or
Yeah.
like your hand can actually write. You know what I mean? It's kind of that
Yeah.
system. Like you said, we could build these things that just can outpace like things so fast, but then coming down the ladder a couple of steps, getting people to take these on and to do these things and understand the why behind them and how this is going to help and how it's going to make your life easier. That's the slower part, I think, that kind of comes along with that.
Definitely.
So that's interesting. Uh,
Definitely. And I, I should have focused this more on my first book, but I am focusing on it more on my second and third ones coming up, are, you know, the ROI factors of these tools. Meaning, yeah, there may be difficult people that you have to convince that are users, for example. But guess what? Us developers, us system designers are also equally, at fault, because a lot of times and I'm going to overgeneralize so no one don't take this the wrong way, is that it's very cool to develop the most cool thing out there, the newest thing out there.
Yeah.
And if there's not a business reason that supports that, that is measurable, then your executives, board, whomever, regardless of how amazing it is, are going to be mad at you. And the system will fail that regard way too. Once again, not a technical reason. It's an adoption issue. It's an setting expectation issue. So, everyone has to keep themselves in check.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. I mean, I hope you guys listening, can kind of put this all together. That sounds like a very familiar thing we talk about on the show is don't build stuff if there's no business use case for it, right? So, very cool. Thank you for adding
But,
that. That was
but
awesome.
stuff is cool. Stuff is cool.
Stuff
Can't
is
deny
cool.
stuff is cool.
Stuff is really cool.
I've built
And
I've
it's
built a million Raspberry Pis, and I don't know why. Because
Yeah. And it's fun to make stuff like that too. But okay. Anyway, I think we're coming to a close here. So you've mentioned it a couple of times. But can you tell us a little bit about the book and kind of where we can get our hands on that?
Sure. So it's available on Amazon. I can send you a link to if you want to post it with notes or anything
Yes,
here.
that will
But
be in the notes.
it's available on Amazon. If you just look in how not to F with a asterisk CK up a CRM system, you should find it. It's available in other outlets, but I think Amazon's probably the easiest. And also Amazon, I think it's on the Kindle Unlimited now too. So if you have access to that stuff, it's there. The book, it's funny. When I first started writing it, I started writing it out of frustration because I'm just like, I don't need one more book or one more website telling me the 10 best things I need to do. I want to find out all the landmines people have hit and on how not to hit them. And that's effectively the book I wrote. I meant it to be about 150 pages. It turned up being 520. And I have no idea how that happened, but it just did. I had a lot more to say than I thought I did. And I think for anybody, if I'm definitely free to answer just questions for free. I mean, just shoot me a question. You find me on LinkedIn or even through my book. I have ways to contact me there as well.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. Sounds like there might be a lot more landmines than you would think if it turned out to be that many pages, right? Because it's
Yeah,
I
yeah,
like that switch though, because like you said, I think there's a lot of you Google any of this stuff. It's the top 10 things, the top 17 things, whatever. But I think that's a lot more useful is look out
yeah.
for these things instead of
And the way I did it like almost like little vignettes. It's kind of like I do a scene setup, like here's the predicament, here's what happened, here's what went wrong, and oh, did I just freeze up on you? Oh, there go.
no, you're
So
good.
here's what went wrong, what lessons did we learn, kind of thing. And I do that, I don't know how many times in the book. And then the other pages surrounding those case studies are just about more facts and factoids that relate into those stories.
Very cool. Very cool. Awesome. Well, that's what it is, guys. How not to what is it? How not to F up CRM systems, right?
Yep.
Got it. Awesome. Well, that was really cool. This was really interesting conversation, Michael. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Not really a topic we've ever really dealt with on this show, so that's kind of an interesting little
There
thing.
you
So
go.
that's why I wanted to have you come on. So I really appreciate
You're
you.
welcome. Thank you
All
very
right,
much.
guys. Yeah, absolutely. So you guys can check out all those links. We'll have all the links we mentioned here in the show notes below. So whether you're watching this on Spotify, on YouTube, or listening to this wherever you get your podcasts, check all that stuff out. And as always, again, another reminder: please like and rate and review the show. I'd really appreciate it. So that is it for this episode. Appreciate all of you joining, and I will see you in the next one.
Thank you.